think there's a lot of maybe unrecognized heroes in this event, along with the children that were protecting other children, which is really amazing to hear about.
This is Today as It Happened. Good Thursday evening to you. I'm Holly Furfer, here with your chronological look at the biggest events and stories of the day. From a deadly Russian attack in Kyiv, Ukraine, to the firing of the CDC director after just 1 month on the job. But first, this morning, we took a look at a community vigil in Minneapolis, honoring the victims of the mass shooting at the Annunciation Catholic School. Investigators are still trying to find a motive for the attack, which killed 2 young children. 14 others were injured, along with 3 elderly parishioners. All are expected to survive. The shooter died by suicide at the scene. Moments before releasing an online video and manifesto police are combing through. Last night, thousands gathered in Minneapolis at a vigil for the victims. Elected officials were on hand to pledge support for the community and all those affected by the shooting. All right, let's bring in Scripps News Group's Jenna Ray live in Minneapolis at a memorial outside the school for a look at what is happening today. And Jenna, what's the latest you can tell us from the ground there?
Holly, within the last few hours, we have seen dozens of people coming up, laying flowers, laying teddy bears, even people bringing books, coming just a few blocks from Annunciation Catholic School and church to pay their respects. A lot of people coming up with young children, walking hand in hand. A lot of them crying as well. It's a very emotional day here in Minneapolis as people kind of start to process exactly what happened yesterday with this tragic shooting that happened at Annunciation Catholic School and church. I'm going to step out so you can really get a scope of just how big this memorial has grown. I talked with you about an hour ago, Holly, and even since then, we've seen it grow more and more. I want to make one specific point. I'm going to walk over here. These are a bunch of books. A woman named Abby Cooper, she came by and dropped off all of these children's books, and I was talking with her. She's a local author here in Minneapolis, and some of these books, you know, I'll bring one of them back over here with me. This one's called All About Grief, and Abby told me that she was dropping these books off at this memorial so that parents can read these children's books to their kids to really talk about these heavy topics and with grief and tragic loss and just how to address those topics with kids. And as a local author, Abby said it was important for her to bring these resources to parents that may otherwise not have them. And so Abby, as well as dozens of other people that we've seen in the community here, just stopping by to pay their respects and also offer support to other people here in the community.
We know that the Hennepin Health Care Facility, they just had a press conference and updated us on the victims. What can you tell us about those that remain in the hospital?
Holly, we know that there are 9 patients still in the hospital, 5 of them children. As you said, we just heard from Hennepin Medical Center. One of the trauma surgeons actually talked about just the immense amount of resources that went into treating these patients that were coming in yesterday. Something that he said that really stood out to me. He said, taking care of 1 child is difficult, but taking care of 8 is nearly impossible. But because of the team of doctors and nurses and other staff that they had at that hospital, he said, they were able to get it done. A quick update on the victims who are still in the hospital. 6 of them are in good condition. 2 of them are in serious condition, and 1 is in critical condition. That person that's still in critical condition, officials have said is a child, rather. I know some reporters were asking about that specific critical condition patient, but they said it was touch and go situation and that they weren't going to kind of elaborate more on that. So I know doctors are still treating patients today. A lot of people have been released, and just the response from EMS, police, all the way to hospital, to the doctors, the trauma surgeons, everyone involved. You know, it was a heavy day and continues to be a heavy day moving forward today.
Absolutely, and a lot of heroes there on the ground. Scripps News Group's Jenna Ray live for us in Minneapolis. Thank you. A federal judge in Miami has denied the request by the federal government to block her earlier decision to close down the immigration detention center in the Florida Everglades known as Alligator Alcatraz. Attorneys for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security had asked U.S. District Judge Kathleen Williams for stay, citing a potential disruption to the government's ability to enforce those immigration laws. In just 7 months, the Trump administration's mass deportation effort of illegal immigrants has surpassed 200,000. That's according to a new report. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is on track for its highest rate of removals in at least a decade, combined with other agencies like U.S. Customs and Border Protection. The overall number of deportations is almost 350,000 since Trump returned to office. The last time ICE recorded this many deportations was under President Barack Obama in the fiscal year 2014, when about 316,000 people were removed. And get your tickets. Nobody hit the jackpot again last night, so now the Powerball prize for Saturday's drawing will be almost $1 billion. You heard me, with a B. The $950 million jackpot will be the 6th largest prize in Powerball history. The estimated lump sum, if you're lucky enough to win on Saturday, would be, just under $429 million. Coming up on Today As It Happened.
Scripps News finding a trend in drowning deaths across the country. I'm Lori Jane Gliha. Ahead, what families are often overlooking when they're on vacation.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. Let's check back in on our daily briefing of today's top stories. A Scripps News investigation finding a trend in dozens of children's deaths while they're on vacation. National investigative correspondent Lori Jane Gliha is live now with her report, Vacation Rentals at Your Own Risk. Lori Jane, this investigation examined incidents at short-term rental homes, and I think every parent saying, what?
Yeah, Holly, we looked at places that were rented out for a few days at a time, like Airbnb and Vrbo, and we found dozens of cases of children drowning in the backyard pool.
Please God, she's not responding. She fell in a pool. We didn't know it.
She fell in a pool?
She fell in a pool.
We were all in here getting dressed to go to Disney. I thought she was sitting on the chair. She was in the bathroom pulling her hair. She come around. All of a sudden, she looked out and saw her in the pool.
So many of these vacations started with hopes of a fun family getaway at a short-term rental home with a beautiful backyard pool. But police videos and photos we gathered from across the country show how quickly some trips can turn into tragedy.
I'm the one that wanted the house. I wanted the stupid pool.
A Scripps News review of dozens of lawsuits, autopsies, and child death reports from Florida to Arizona found children repeatedly slipping out of sight and drowning at unfamiliar homes.
Is this an Airbnb? Yeah, Airbnb.
Our investigation documented more than 40 short-term rental drownings and near drownings involving children since 2021 in Florida and Arizona alone. Many times, records show, in pools without fences.
We were all here. We were all awake. We were all watching. And they were there and they were playing. The problem I have is my 3-year-old is very sneaky. Okay. At my own personal house, I have locks everywhere. Okay. So I thought because there was like alarms, I don't know if they actually work. I should have probably tested them. I'm not too sure, to be honest.
Last summer, Colorado mom Patricia Parra picked out what she thought was the perfect Airbnb rental in the Phoenix area in Arizona.
We picked that home because it looked kid-friendly.
The place had a water slide and yard games, but what it didn't have was a pool fence or safety cover that could stop her 2-year-old boy, named Prince, from getting in.
Prince. What?
When the family realized the toddler had slipped out of the home in the early morning, it was too late to save him. They found him floating in the pool, unresponsive.
It just doesn't make sense.
The medical examiner determined Prince's death was an accident caused by drowning. Experts say families who are visiting homes with pools aren't always familiar with how vigilant they must be and how quickly the worst can happen.
People say, I watch my children. The level that you need to supervise around water is 10 times higher than it is just in a home, I think, without it.
Michelle Long is with the National Drowning Prevention Alliance. The group published this vacation home water safety checklist, including advice to look for a fence when renting.
And the standard also is to have a tall fence, right?
Yes, you want a self-closing, self-latching gate here. And so this is, see how it locks automatically.
Long says direct, adequate supervision is an important part of drowning prevention. But there is a reason states and local jurisdictions across the country have adopted pool safety standards, many in place for decades.
A fence gives you that extra time. That interior barrier is there to help you in case you lose track of a child.
Records we pulled from the date of the drowning show the property where Patricia was staying didn't have a required short-term rental permit, according to the city of Phoenix. And about a month after her child died, a city inspection found the property to be non-compliant with pool barrier regulations. We also found records showing multiple times after that the city inspected the property, even posting on it a sign that says unsafe. Later, an inspector reported the sign had been removed without authorization, and the rentals continued.
You want to stop that child before they can get to the water. Is it going to make that home safer? It's going to give you those few minutes from what could have been a tragedy into, okay, my child's crying outside because they couldn't get to the pool.
Long says the National Drowning Prevention Alliance would like to work with short-term rental platforms to help consumers decide which homes with pools might be the safest for families with children.
We would love to see them work with us and get that education out there, whether it's a stamp, whether it's a scale of this is the safety standards that it meets. We'd be happy to work with them at any time.
Scripps News took this offer to short-term rental platforms Vrbo and Airbnb, and we're already seeing impact. Vrbo asked us to put them in touch with the National Drowning Prevention Alliance. Meanwhile, after communicating with Airbnb about our story for nearly a month, just last week they announced a new safety feature in their booking app that offers renters expert safety tips and example questions to ask a host about water protections and considerations. Airbnb says this campaign was in the works long before we reached out to them.
That's Prince, yeah.
Patricia keeps photos and mementos from her son's short life nearby.
Everywhere we go, we have to set up for him his little spot, you know?
Yeah.
A little prince who lives on in her heart.
And again, experts say supervision is key, but our investigation found many of these cases also involve families who are pointing the finger not only at homeowners, but at the short-term rental platforms that are allowing homes to be rented with pools that may not have all the safety features that are recommended or required. We found a slew of lawsuits like this, and we're going to be reporting more on that and how they are responding to this in our continuing coverage, Holly, in the coming weeks.
And Lori Jean, you've reviewed a lot of cases. Do we know what the circumstances of most of these are? Are the kids already outside playing at the pool when these incidents happen?
Yeah, you know what? We've seen a few cases like that where adults were with the kids at the pool or near the pool. We even saw one where a teenager got into the pool knowing that he couldn't swim and went too deep. But in reality, most of the cases we reviewed happened when people were not actually swimming. We saw several cases in which kids somehow opened the back door or got into the pool while the adults were distracted. And we actually obtained some rare video of that, Holly, on an incident just like that, a survival story where a 1-year-old walked right by 3 adults who didn't see him fall into the pool. We're going to be reporting on that in the coming weeks. But this is why those layers are so important to slow a kid down from getting into the water. That's the door alarm, that's the fence, and the locks that are placed out of reach.
All right, such an important story. Thank you for bringing that to us. National investigative correspondent Lori Jane Gliha live in Denver. Amazing work as always. Thank you. Up next on Today's It Happened.
She was not aligned with the president's mission to make America healthy again. And the secretary asked her to resign. She said she would, and then she said she wouldn't, so the president fired her, which he has every right to do.
You're watching Today as It Happens, Scripps News rundown of the biggest events and stories of the day. So let's get to it.
This is Caroline Levitt, who just began taking questions from reporters in that room. Let's take a listen.
And also, overnight, the White House said that she did not align with the president's agenda. Dr. Menard's attorneys say that she refused to rubber stamp unscientific, reckless directives and fire dedicated health experts. What specifically did she do wrong?
Look, what I will say about this individual is that her lawyer's statement made it abundantly clear themselves that she was not aligned with the president's mission to make America healthy again. And the secretary asked her to resign. She said she would, and then she said she wouldn't, so the president fired her, which he has every right to do. It was President Trump who was overwhelmingly reelected on November 5th. This woman has never received a vote in her life, and the president has the authority to fire those who are not aligned with his mission. A new replacement will be announced by either the president or the secretary very soon. And the president and Secretary Kennedy are committed to restoring trust and transparency and credibility to the CDC by ensuring their leadership and their decisions are more public-facing, more accountable, strengthening our public health system, and restoring it to its core mission of protecting Americans from communicable diseases, investing in innovation to prevent, detect, and respond to future threats. That's the mission of the CDC, and we're going to make sure that folks that are in positions of leadership there are aligned with that mission.
Briefly on another topic, alligator Alcatraz. Last week, a judge on an environmental concerns lawsuit said that the administration had 60 days to wind down operations there, state officials did. Now, the administration has not been shy in fighting back against what it calls activist judges, but why is it backing down this time?
We're not backing down. We've always said that we are going to continue to fight in the court of law for what's right, because we know that what this administration is doing with respect to all policy, but also immigration policy, is above the books, and we're abiding by our nation's immigration laws. And we think it's despicable that an activist judge has inserted themselves in this migrant detention facility to the point where DHS is now having to relocate these illegal immigrants to other detention facilities around the country. That is an unnecessary burden on the Department of Homeland Security and these agents who should be removing these criminals from our community. That's what the American people elected this president to do. So we've always maintained, Gabe, we're going to comply with court orders, but we're also going to fight back on them on the merits of the law. And DHS is in compliance while we disagree with this decision, and we'll continue to fight it in court. Let's go to...
Hey,
go ahead.
Thanks so much. So just following up on the CDC firing.
Sure.
Are you anticipating other changes there at CDC in addition to that firing? And is the administration going through in a very sort of organized fashion? Is there a task force that's going through high-level appointees to see who is or isn't aligned with the mission? Like, should we expect more changes?
Not to my knowledge. I understand there were a few other individuals who resigned after the firing of Ms. Monarez. One of those individuals wrote in his departure statement that he identifies pregnant women as pregnant people. So that's not someone who we want in this administration anyway. So if people are not aligned with the president's vision and the secretary's vision to make our country healthy again, then we will gladly show them the door.
Caroline, can I just follow up on...
Go to the back.
Thank you, Caroline.
Go behind you, Andrew. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Caroline. The military deployment that President Trump has sent to the Caribbean Sea close to the shores with Venezuela is massive. It's much more that is needed to simply counter narcotics operations. Is President Trump considering launching military strikes to military installments or facilities in Venezuelan soil?
I won't get ahead of the president with respect to any military action or questions about that ever. But what I will tell you is that many Caribbean nations and many nations in the region have applauded the administration's counter-drug operations and efforts, and the president is prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into our country and to bring those responsible to justice. And as I've said from this podium before, the Maduro regime is not the legitimate government of Venezuela. It is a narco-terror cartel. Maduro is not a legitimate president. He is a fugitive head of this drug cartel. He has been indicted in the United States for trafficking drugs into our country, and it is the utmost responsibility of this president and this administration to prevent the illicit flow of drugs into our country and to protect citizens from those deadly poisons. Reagan.
Thanks, Caroline. I have two questions for you.
Sure.
Democrats, including former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, attacked prayer and pushed gun control in the aftermath of yesterday's shooting. What's the White House's response to their comments?
Yes, I saw the comments of my predecessor, Ms. Psaki, and frankly, I think they're incredibly insensitive and disrespectful to the tens of millions of Americans of faith across this country who believe in the power of prayer, who believe that prayer works, and who believe that in a time of mourning like this, when beautiful young children were killed while praying in a church, it's utterly disrespectful to deride the power of prayer in this country, and it's disrespectful to the millions of Americans of faith. And I would encourage Ms. Psaki to pray for these families themselves who need it right now more than ever.
My second question for you is that
All right, you've been listening to the White House press briefing. Of course, Minneapolis coming up a number of times, but also some high-profile firings from members of the administration, one at the CDC, another at the Federal Reserve.
Coming up on Today As It Happened, a wave of resignations followed the firing of CDC Director Dr. Susan Menares as one senator calls for Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to step down. Stay with us for a chat with congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed amid the public health turmoil after the break. Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer here with your daily rundown of today's top stories.
We turn now to a massive shakeup at the CDC. The Department of Health and Human Services fired Dr. Susan Menares just 1 month after taking the reins as director. No official cause for her release was given, and after her departure, several other top officials resigned. Washington correspondent Steph Liebergen is live for us in our D.C. newsroom with the latest. And Steph, we know that there's been some controversy about her departure. She and her lawyers said that essentially she couldn't be fired, at least not by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the Secretary of HHS. Where do things stand at this hour?
Well, the White House is certainly saying that she has been fired. She is no longer in her job. We heard that just within the last hour from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt saying that the president had fired her. We have not yet gotten confirmation from her legal team that they have accepted that firing. The last we heard from them is that they had rejected a notification from a White House personnel office saying that Menares was fired and saying that they did not accept that. So we're still waiting to hear from her legal team on whether the president himself did actually reach out and whether they have accepted her firing from her job as the head of the CDC. But her attorneys have been very clear in the statements that they have put out that they say this isn't just about her. I want to read one of their portion of one of their earlier quotes where they said this is not about one official. It's about the systemic dismantling of public health institutions, the silencing of experts, and the dangerous politicization of science. The attack on Dr. Menares is a warning to every American. Our evidence-based systems are being undermined from within. So Menares and her team concerned, saying that, basically she's being pushed out for political reasons. And the White House says that the statements, even from her own attorneys, they confirmed that she was not in line with RFK Jr. She wasn't in line with what the Trump administration wanted to see from the head of the CDC. And Caroline Leavitt saying that, that's exactly why she was let go. As you noted, she was on the job for less than a month. It's unclear whether her legal team has yet accepted that firing. And then we also have put out questions to say whether she was at work, whether she reported to work today, if she was rejecting the firing from White House personnel, whether she went to work today, whether she still has access to her government office or government email. We're waiting to hear back to see what is the case around all of that and kind of a response from her legal team after that press conference with Caroline Leavitt.
And Steph, it wasn't just Menares. There are 4 other CDC officials who left their jobs this week. What's the reaction among public health officials?
Well, morale at the CDC especially was already low before this week and before all of these leaders are leaving their jobs, some by choice and some not. Remember, it was less than 2 weeks ago now that there was the shooting at that CDC facility in Atlanta. But other public health officials are really speaking out, one going so far as to say that the CDC has been decapitated. Others saying that the loss of experienced infectious disease experts, that it puts Americans across the country at risk, and they're pointing directly to failed leadership as a part of the problem. So among the other officials who have stepped down and resigned, it includes the Deputy Director and Chief Medical Officer. She had been in that job since 2022, so she started that under the Biden administration. She cited budget cuts, reorganizations, and the rise of misinformation on vaccines as why she was leaving her position. The head of the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases put out a lengthy resignation letter on social media. On X, he cited changes to vaccines. He cited the CDC and HHS relying on what he called untrusted and unvetted sources, saying that the policies and the guidance that this health agency is putting out now are designed to hurt people rather than improve the public's health. RFK Jr. hasn't really explicitly addressed the firing or the pushing out of Susan Menarez, the head of the CDC, but he did say that he's worried about CDC officials not being aligned with his vision and with President Trump's vision for the agency. The White House says they're not going to be doing a review of all top leadership at the CDC, that's not on the agenda right now. But Caroline Leavitt did say that if there are officials anywhere in the public health space that disagree with what the president's agenda is, with what he wants to focus on, that she says they are happy to show them the door. We don't know yet when we're going to get a new CDC director, but Caroline Leavitt's promising that will come very soon, either announced by President Trump or potentially announced by RFK.
All of this shakeups have caught the attention of Congress, and joining me now is our congressional correspondent, Nate Reed. Nate, I understand that some of those with oversight responsibilities are speaking out in light of this. What have you learned?
There was one key name in Congress to get RFK Jr. confirmed, and that would be the chairman of the Senate Health Committee, Health, Education's Labor and Pensions Committee, Bill Cassidy, the Republican from Louisiana. He helped shepherd through RFK's confirmation. He said that he had some concerns at various points during the process, but ultimately allowed him to be confirmed. A lot of questions about whether he regrets that decision. His people have not responded to me when I've asked that question, whether he still has confidence in RFK Jr. But they did, in the last couple minutes, as we've been talking, put out a statement. I want to read that for you now here. Senator Cassidy putting out this statement saying, quote, serious allegations have been made about the meeting agenda of that key vaccine meeting in the month of September. He said that those decisions impact children's health and the meeting should not occur, quote, until significant oversight has been conducted. If the meeting proceeds, any recommendations made should be rejected as lacking legitimacy, given the seriousness of the allegations and the current turmoil in CDC leadership. That, of course, coming from the chairman of the Senate Health Committee. So obviously, that is a really big situation there we're monitoring. Noting that RFK Jr. was confirmed by Republicans and Republicans alone. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, both of them helped confirm RFK Jr. They had said at the time that they had doubts, they had some concerns. Ultimately, it appeared that he allayed those concerns. Remember, President Trump made it a key priority early in Congress. I think it was something like the 50th roll call vote that they took for the year. Roll call vote number 52 is one of the very first 100 votes that they took in this year to try and get him confirmed. Yeah. So again, this was a key priority of President Trump, and ultimately I've reached out to these Republicans, moderate Republicans, who were the decisive votes in confirming him, to ask if they have concerns. They still have faith in RFK Jr. They have not responded in time for our conversation. Yeah, and I believe it was Mitch McConnell, right, was the only Republican to not vote for Kennedy. We understand he's going to be on Capitol Hill. Is it next week? Is that going to be potentially some fireworks here related to what we saw in a Bill Cassidy? A week from today. Okay. It's in front of the Senate Finance Committee. Okay, that's one of the committees of jurisdiction. Yeah. So he will be appearing 10 a.m. next Thursday, September 4th. Congress returns to Washington, and boy, they're going to be returning with full force. Again, a lot of questions about what that hearing is going to look like. The chairman of that committee not really commenting on the latest shakeup. I asked his office specifically for a comment, but they did say that they want to conduct oversight of the president's agenda, and they specifically mentioned that vaccines are one of the things that they're going to be looking at. Obviously, a lot of the concern here, and some of the reporting says that this CDC director was ousted over her lack of putting forward some of these vaccine skeptical type ideas that have at least been circling around the RFK Jr. orbit for quite some time. Again, a lot of questions about where things go from here. But at the same time, Congress has taken notice, and it certainly seems like this is going to be a very early controversy when they return this coming Tuesday.
Up next on Today's It Happened.
Вирішення ключових питань, але він
Putin is choosing ballistics instead of any real steps towards peace. He kills children so as not to talk about when and how there will be peace.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened, Scripps News debrief of our top stories of the day. So let's jump right back in.
There appears to be no peace in sight for Ukraine as Russia unleashes its latest attack, a massive effort against the capital city of Kyiv. Overnight, Russia hit the city with multiple drones and missiles, killing 21 people, including 4 children, and destroying several buildings.
In the latest Russian drone and missile strike against Kyiv. This one particularly notable for its scale. Over 30 missiles fired by Russia to the Ukrainian capital and nearly 600 drones, making it very difficult for the Ukrainian Air Force to intercept any of these armaments. This is also notable because in this attack, an EU institution as well as the United Kingdom's British Council were hit in the strike. The European Union's foreign minister says that the attack shows Russia has made a deliberate choice to escalate and mock the peace efforts. And here in the UK, the Russian ambassador has been summoned and the UK will put across its anger at Russia at the continuing attacks. The foreign minister here saying Putin is killing children and civilians and sabotaging hopes of peace. This bloodshed, the foreign minister says, must end. And it's a similar story in Ukraine, where this latest attack is being seen as a rebuke to that potential for peace after Vladimir Putin met the US President Donald Trump in Alaska. President Zelensky saying that all deadlines have already been broken, dozens of opportunities for diplomacy ruined. Russia must feel accountable for every strike, for every day of the war.
абсолютно чітко демонструє, що російські цілі дійсно
This strike absolutely clearly demonstrates that Russia's goals really have not changed. They want to fight and are striking not only at our people, not only at our cities, our communities. Russia is now striking at everyone in the world who seeks peace.
A Ukrainian delegation is due to meet United States officials in New York on Friday. Stuart Smith, Scripps News Group, London.
Coming up on Today As It Happened, the Minneapolis shooter left behind videos expressing rage, violence, and anti-Semitism before committing Wednesday's deadly mass shooting. Stay with us for Scripps News correspondent Alex Miller's reporting as investigators comb through the killer's manifesto looking for a motive. That's after the break.
Investigation continues into the Minnesota Catholic school shooting. In just the last hour, police sharing more insights on how that crime unfolded and painting a clearer picture of the gunman. Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller is in New York, but we begin with Maura Barrett, who is live for us in Minneapolis. And Maura, we heard the police chief there call this unthinkable, completely senseless act. What more did we learn from officials today?
Andrew, I was at the press conference, and in addition to that contextualization, the police chief also said that this was a heinous and cowardly act by the shooter. And we learned a few additional details this afternoon on top of the fact that we now know that there are the 2 children that tragically were killed and 18 now we know injured, meaning that 15 children were injured in the shooting in addition to those 3 elderly adults. Now, in terms of the new details we learned, the police chief laid out that in examining the scene, they were able to recover 3 shotgun shells and approximately 116 rifle rounds around the scene of the church. He said that 1 live round was recovered from a handgun that appeared to have had gotten stuck when the shooter was attempting attempting to use it. And then we knew that there had been 3 search warrants at residences associated with the shooter that police were examining, and the police chief confirmed that they had recovered hundreds of pieces of evidence, including pages of that manifesto that we've been talking about and electronic devices that they're going to have to process and work their way through. The police chief also laid out some of the details around how the shooter conducted this tragedy in terms of shooting from the outside. It's a practice, we learned, that this church, Annunciation behind me, has a practice once mass begins that they lock the doors from the inside, though it's not clear if that's out of caution for a potential situation like this. But all of that to say, the police chief said that this indeed saves lives because the doors were locked at the time of the shooting, but we do know that there were those barricades placed on the outside. And so that cowardly and heinous act the police chief referred to was the fact that the shooter was targeting children inside the church that the shooter could not see. And that's something that the police chief got visibly upset about in the press conference. But we also heard from the acting U.S. attorney representing Minnesota. He said that they are still investigating the why of the motive behind this, but they did lay out that the overall purpose of this was hate. But I want you to hear what District Attorney Joe Thompson laid out in terms of what they believe to be the goal of this incident.
One thing is clear, and it's going to be hard to hear, but it's important to the question of why this happened. More than anything, the shooter wanted to kill children, defenseless children. The shooter was obsessed with the idea of killing children. The shooter saw the attack as a way to target our most vulnerable among us while they were at their most vulnerable at school and at church. I won't dignify the shooter's words by repeating them. They are horrific and vile. But in short, the shooter wanted to watch children suffer.
And so, as I mentioned, police said that they have a lot of evidence to work their way through to get more clarity. They did also mention part of the evidence they're reviewing is surveillance video showing the exterior of the church, and that is how they were able to confirm that the shooter was not able to get inside. There were no shots fired inside the sanctuary from outside, and they said that they will be able to confirm at a later date how long the entire shooting lasted. So more of those minute-by-minute details.
And Maura, you've spent a lot of time today outside of that church and that school. Talk to us a little bit about how the community is continuing to process this.
Andrew, it's been nonstop foot traffic outside of the church. I saw neighbors picking up flowers, buying flowers at local stores, bringing them to add to the memorial here. They have 2 posters in the shape of a cross where neighbors are signing prayers, and there is a placeholder for the children, the 2 children's names on those posters. The children that were killed in this incident, the Annunciation Church is calling their angels. And so understandably, the community is very torn up. They seem reassured by the fact that the children had the training to do what needed to be done, but they're also alarmed that that is the reality that they're facing today, especially in such a tight-knit community. And talking with people, it's become clear that this church is the pillar of part of the Catholic community here in Minneapolis. We saw that with thousands of people showing up at these vigils on Wednesday night. I was able to speak with a few community members who can put it in their own words if you want to take a listen.
It's also made me think a lot about just mental health in this country. And, the root of all this is obviously someone that was really unwell.
Of any place I know, this is where I felt most safe and where I think everyone I know felt most safe. My children felt safe. Everyone felt safe here. And I just pray that it continues to be a place where people feel safe after a period of whatever this is going to look like.
I also spoke with 2 high school age girls who said because of the way they saw EMS and medical officials and police officials respond so quickly. Police today told us it was a matter of minutes until an officer showed up. When they saw the response time, that made them feel safer going to school, despite the prevalence of how often they're seeing these mass shootings across the country. And so the closeness and the reliance on faith is something that we've heard time and time again here in Minneapolis today, Andrew.
All right, Scripps News correspondent Maura Barrett live from Minneapolis as that community continues the long process to recovery. I want to bring in our national correspondent Alex Miller. She's in New York, but has been following this ever since that shooting first occurred yesterday morning. Alex, what have you learned from that police briefing about the shooter and their potential motivations?
Well, they are keeping a very specific motive close to the vest at this point. They have interviewed a number of relatives. They have not spoken to the mother. They have spoken to the father of this shooter. But what we are learning is that the shooter was full of hate, as Maura just spoke about, that there was a specific fascination with hating different groups of people, from Mexicans to Black people to Christians and Jewish people. We know that the shooter was a student at that school, attended that church. Their mother also worked at that church for a time frame. But we do not know why this shooter decided this day, this time, though we know that they knew about the time frame of this mass. Now, we know with the history of school shooters in America that they are often obsessed with notoriety. This shooter was no different. Listen to what both the police chief and the assistant U.S. attorney had to say.
What we have seen so far is this is an individual who, unfortunately, like so many other mass shooters that we have seen in this country too often and around the world, had some deranged fascination with previous mass shootings and very disturbing writings that demonstrate hatred towards many different individuals and different groups of people. And he fantasized about the plans of other mass shooters.
There appears to be only one group that the shooter didn't hate, one group of people who the shooter admired. The group were the school shooters and mass murderers that are notorious in this country.
And Andrew, that is in line with what we saw. We've seen on those weapons him write the word Waco. We also saw the shooter write the word Rupnow, which is the name of a school shooter in Wisconsin from last year. So it's really about building that notoriety. That's why we have not used the shooter's name since it was first announced, and that's why the police are also no longer using this shooter's name. We know from the manifesto, we know from the letter that this shooter wrote to their family, that there was a feeling there that they were sick, they were depressed, there was a thought that they had cancer. Now, there was also a question during that news conference about whether they were already being investigated by the FBI. The FBI speaking up on this, saying that there was no such investigation, and police saying throughout this that all of those weapons were bought legally and nothing relating to mental health had risen to the level that this person would not have been able to purchase a weapon legally.
Okay, Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller for us in New York. Alex, thank you.
I'm Holly Furford. We hope you have a great Thursday night.